talk about what it's like to be a husband and wife team and to come on to a Youth with a Mission base or campus. Here we are in a whole different kind of setup. Usually, if you're living in society, the husband, he goes off to work, he's with his boss, all the lines of authority are very clear. He doesn't have to call back and say, honey, can I do what my boss says? He has got it all straight out. He knows exactly what he's to do. The mother may have the domain of her home and taking care of the children, or she may have a job that she goes out to. But everything's real clear, isn't it? All the lines of authority are clear. But when we all live and work closely together, and there makes a whole different, complex, sometimes more difficult setup. And people say, oh, they can't work. You can't have a husband and wife team working together. It won't work. Well, it will work. And one of the joys that we have in our life being called to work together is we have these same friends, same relationships, same interests, same vision, same goals, and our lives are meshed together. And the two of us are a far more powerful team than we could be by ourselves. That's why God called us together. But there are some things that we need to think about that helps delineate some of the problems that we could have. And some years ago, I put together a leadership training on what hat are you wearing? And that's sort of become a catchphrase within the mission that gives a lot of explanation. So I want to just give an overview of that kind of thing. All right, you're going down the street. You see a policeman with his hat on. You know he's a policeman, right? He's got his work hat on, and he's a policeman, riding his motorcycle. And right now, he's the policeman. No question about it. Got his police hat. He goes on home, puts away his motorcycle, takes off his police hat, and sticks on his cowboy hat. He's got a ranch, and you see him going down the road, and you see him buy his hat, and you think, that's a cowboy, or that's a man that has a ranch. That we know what he's doing because of his hat. We can see it. It's real easy to see. And we can identify what the role is by the hat that they're wearing. Well, as we come in to work together in a community, now let me just divert here just a few minutes, because we've talked a lot about community. One of the basic values that we don't have in the mission is that you must live in community. That is not ever anything that we've said that you have to be in community to be a YWAMer. That everybody has to live in one house or live close together or in a campus area. We've been called into fellowship together, and we have lived in community together lots and lots of places, and we probably always will because it's more efficient for us. But it isn't one of our foundational values. So if you think, I just don't think that I could live in one room within this particular community, so I doubt that I could be a YWAMer because that's all you've ever seen, you don't understand. We have lots and lots of places where people don't all live together. But a lot of what we'll talk about together in living together in community is that's where things come up against one another. And so we've got to talk about that more. Now, one of our founding values is that we work in teams together and there is a sense of community. We are called into fellowship one with another. Some years ago, there was a real trend in the body of Christ for living in communities. And we had been doing it for years. And people would come to us and say, talk to us about living in communities. You guys have done this for such a long time. How does this all work and all? And we said, we aren't into community living. We're not a community like that. We just live together in order to get the work God's called us to do. We're not really into community for community's sake. Are you with me? There's a really big difference. But you and those of us that have lived on a campus or in a YWAM base, we know that you can live within your 2 little rooms or whatever it is that you have and have no sense of community whatsoever. You never invite anybody in. You just retreat into your room. That is your space, and you are not going to share it. And there is no desire in your heart to reach out to the new students that are coming in, to hear the reports about teams coming back. You are living in a place where there's a lot of people, but you are not a part of the community. And I have seen people that have never lived within the campus or the base that are very much a part of the community. They are a part of everything that happens. They just don't happen to live in that place. So as we talk about living and working close together, it's because a great majority of our people live like that within the mission. And the principles that we'll talk about, they will apply to, I think, almost all our living situations. But I want you to understand you don't have to live within this particular community in order to be a YWAMer. Is that clear? But you do have to have a spirit of fellowship. And your brothers and sisters and the staff and the students and the people going on outreach and those involved in mercy ministries, evangelism and training, they need to be really important people in your life. Those are your brothers and sisters. That's the extended family. That's the area of fellowship. But we don't have to all live in the same place. All right, so we work together, and we have to know what hat are we wearing. And so here I am with my ministry hat on. I am in charge of hospitality. My husband is the base director. So he has his base director, his ministry hat on. I have my hospitality department hat on. And we are in a meeting together. He makes a suggestion that that he wants the hospitality department to do. And I say, oh no, honey, this is not a good idea. That is not the time to call him honey. I have just taken off my hospitality department ministry hat, and I've put on my wife hat. And he's leading that meeting, and he comes along for the report from the hospitality department, and I give my report. And he says, oh, Dar, I really don't think that'll work. That's not a very good idea. Now, dear, you shouldn't have, blah, 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 blah. He has just taken off his ministry hat and put on his husband hat, and everybody feels uncomfortable. And we have to delineate those categories that we put on our ministry hat, and we don't get it mixed up with our marriage hat. Now remember, we've talked about the fact that everybody in the family are team members. We're all together in this. You're called into the mission together. And so when a family comes into the mission, the husband needs to have encouraged his wife that she too has a destiny in missions and she is called. And so he joyfully releases her to have an area of responsibility within the mission and the calling that's appropriate to the age of her children, appropriate to her gifts and her talents, but he has released her to do that. And he's allowed her to wear her ministry hat. Now, what he has to recognize is just as if she was walking out the door to go and work as a secretary in an office and is submitted to the boss of that particular office, that is her role in the office. He doesn't call the boss up and say, I'm sorry, my wife cannot work on Saturday. We already had plans. We're going to a Barbie. Sorry, she can't work. No, that is not his domain, is it? That is the office domain. She's submitted to the supervisor of that particular office. We don't have any trouble understanding that, do we? But within the mission setting, where we're all living so close together, it's very often that we run into difficulties there. I remember one time when I was running hospitality years ago, a wife that had come in to work with us, almost everything that we would ever ask her to do, her husband would counter. Finally, I said to him, would you like to be a part of the hospitality department? Because we can't seem to make decisions without you. And what had happened, he couldn't keep the hat off. He was putting the husband hat on instead of the ministry hat and releasing his wife. And his wife then was put in a terrible bind because she had this dual submission that was running into conflict. And so it's important when we release one another into leadership that we wear the appropriate hat. Now, as Lauren and I have worked together through the years, I've recognized that there are also some other things in which there are pitfalls in the way we live and work. I'll use ourselves as examples. I don't think we're workaholics. I just think we love what we do. I don't think we're compulsive. Our lives look like we are, but I don't think that's I don't feel driven to do it. I have been evaluating this recently. But both of us absolutely love what we do and the call of God. And we both have carried a lot of responsibility. And so what we can do, because we love what we do and we're called to do it, and we both have a capacity to carry a lot of responsibility, we can keep our ministry hats on all the time and never take them off and put the marriage hat on. And particularly when you live and work all in the same place. And so you have to be conscious of taking off the ministry hat and putting on the marriage hat and saying, for this little bit of time, right now, let's just put aside our work responsibilities and let's talk about us. Let's do that. I remember friends of mine that had not been married very long and were both involved in a lot in ministry, living in one room. And she said they'd lay in bed at night and talk all about the ministry. And finally the husband said, you know, this bed's becoming the office. So they decided, because they didn't have an office, they'd sit on the floor and talk about the ministry, and then they'd do other things in bed. Because they were having a hard time getting the hats on in the right places. Now, sometimes you don't have to delineate it that far. But as you carry responsibilities together, you do have to remember that we are also working on relationships, friends, that are to last a lifetime. And one of the things that will make some of you that are new to the mission kind of laugh is it took us a long, long time in this mission, probably till 1988, I think, right around that time, to decide we were a long-term mission. I mean, there were those of us that were in long-term, but none of our thinking was long-term because everything was short. Go out on a summer service, a short school, a Go festival. Everything we did was short. And so you always thought of yourself on one project after another. You never looked at it for the long picture. Well, we're in here for the long range. And some of us, on our tombstone, it's going to say, here lies a YWAMer. You know, it's the lifetime call. For some of the rest of you, maybe it's a short call. That's all right. But whatever length of time it is, if you're in the mission for a short time, you still have a marriage relationship that's got to last a lifetime. You still have children that are going to be your children until you die, and then even after that, they're still your children. So that's another lifetime project. So as we're doing these wonderful things for the kingdom, we can, if we move from just one short crisis to another, we can recognize we have not taken any time for the nurturing of our own relationships. You can be particularly susceptible to this if you've come into a community. You're thrilled to be a part of the community. You have all of your meals in a public dining room situation. You get up in the morning and you have your one room or two rooms that you're living in. You go, everything is done with other people. And you love all these other people. That's not the problem. But you also have a relationship that has to be built. And you have to consciously work to make that happen. You have to be committed to that. And so in your overall scheduling, you have to put in time for yourselves. It's just got to be there. So it will change from one time to another. Sometimes you're doing coffee bar ministry, you're doing evening ministries, you're out every single evening. Well, one of the ways you can do it is think in terms of dividing the time of the day into 3 sections. And you take, instead of having an evening together, you'll have an afternoon together. Or you'll have a morning together. But you recognize that the usual time that you would maybe have together in the evenings, that's not available. But you have an overall plan throughout that week for time together. And you have to work that out with the kind of people that you are. Some people work really good on a schedule, all right? Lauren and I are too spontaneous for that. We will usually, at the beginning of a week, when we're living in the middle of the community, our children are home with us, we would be at the beginning of the week, we would both talk about all of our responsibilities. And where were we going to get our own time? The one thing that we did do religiously was Wednesdays was always family night. The children never planned things, even in their teen years, out on Wednesday evening. Wednesday was the night that we always tried to have dinner together. And that was one of the things that Lauren tried not to make appointments then, I tried not to, and there would be occasional times. But that was, we at least knew we would have that one touch point. We worked like mad during the week. And then we would try on the weekends to have some time off. That was the way it worked for us. And the age of your kids are going to make a difference, the cycle of time that you're in your life, your ministry responsibilities. You're going to have to reevaluate all of the time. So I can't tell you how to do it, but I can tell you that you have to be deliberate about doing it. Because we don't have the 5-day-a-week, 8-hour workday usually. Now, in some settings you have that, and that's okay. But if you're not careful, you'll recognize that time has gone on and on and on. You have your work-related friendships, he has his work-related friendships, and you're not getting any time together. And one of the things that happens to us is that we have our fellowship needs met by lots and lots of people. People of like interests, of like personalities. And so there's a fellowship there that is really rich. But it should help enrichen your family relationship, not take away from it. The community is not also to raise your children. And that if you live in these smaller situations, the children can be raised pretty well by the community, and you'll never have them at home because there's so many kids and there's so much to do. And normally, your children, you bring them into the house and they get a chance to play outside for a couple of hours, but then they're back in their house and they own garden and the children are in your house. But it doesn't work that way within the community. And so you have to deliberately say to the children that you'll be playing in the house during these hours, and you have to plan time for the children to be inside or plan times to be with them. Otherwise, they are just out with the community the entire time. Everybody else is giving input to them but you. Those things that happen normally in a regular workday living situation, we have to be more deliberate about. You'll figure out good ways to do it. But the important point is that you are deliberate about the fact that you and your spouse need time together. Sometimes it means taking a walk together, get out of the community situation. If you can, many times God will provide special weekends for you away. God will be faithful to you in this category if we'll just allow him to be so. And remember, this relationship is meant to last a lifetime. That project you're on might be for this weekend, might be for 3 months. The school, that's going to be a 3 months or 6 months. But the children and the husband and wife relationship are to last a lifetime. So honor it, shall you? Do you understand? Just honor it, and you'll figure out the right way to make it happen, and it will be different for each one of you. All right, we'll just take a break.